The sky was filled with smoke and ash when the last battle ended. The fields that were once green were now nothing but gray soil and broken machines. The air still smelled of burned metal and melted armor. Between the wrecks of human and alien ships, there was only silence, a silence that was heavy, sad, and strange after so many days of fighting. Eli Ward walked carefully through the destroyed valley, holding a small scanner in his hand. He was not a soldier. He worked as a repair technician for the human forces. His job was to search the battlefield after the fights were over, collect damaged communication devices, and fix what could still be repaired. But today, there was little left to fix, only ruin and death. He stepped over a broken piece of an alien ship and sighed. Another day of cleaning up other people's mess, he muttered to himself. His voice sounded small under the huge empty sky. Eli had always hated war. He had seen too many good people die for reasons that didn't make sense anymore, but he had nowhere else to go. So he kept walking, scanning, and hoping that one day the fighting would finally stop. His scanner beeped softly. Eli frowned and looked down at the small screen. There was a weak life signal nearby, barely strong enough to be real. He adjusted the device, thinking maybe it was just a piece of old tech still running. But no, the reading was clear. Someone or something was alive. He followed the signal through the rubble. The air grew thicker with smoke as he moved closer to the source. He stopped near what used to be a Cerathian carrier, a large alien transport ship now split in half. The metal was twisted, burned, and half buried in dirt. The scanner's light turned green. The life form was underneath the wreckage. Eli hesitated. His orders were clear. Do not engage or rescue alien survivors. The ceasefire was still fragile, and helping the enemy could bring serious trouble. He looked around the silent field. No one was watching. He took a deep breath and decided to check anyway. He began moving the smaller pieces of metal away, careful not to make too much noise. After a few minutes, he found what looked like an alien arm covered in silver armor. Then he saw her. It was a woman, a young alien woman. Her skin had a faint silvery glow, and her hair was like strands of pale blue silk, dirty with dust and ash. She wore a damaged chest plate marked with strange symbols. A deep wound on her side was still bleeding weakly. Eli's eyes widened when he noticed a golden crest on her shoulder plate. He recognized it from the military database. It was the mark of the Cerathian royal house. He whispered to himself, "You've got to be kidding me. A princess?" The alien woman stirred weakly, opening her eyes. They glowed a soft violet filled with pain and confusion. She looked at him, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. Her voice was faint but clear. "Please, help me." Eli froze. His heart started to race. Every part of him screamed that this was wrong, that he should report it and walk away. But there was something about the way she looked at him, something human in that fear. He knelt beside her and said softly, "I'll help you, but you need to stay quiet." She nodded slowly before falling unconscious again. Eli didn't waste another second. He used his tools to lift the heavier debris off her body, one piece at a time. It took him almost an hour, and by the end his hands were shaking and covered in dirt. But he finally managed to pull her free. He carried her to his small transport truck parked nearby. The vehicle was damaged but still working. Inside there was a small med kit. Eli wasn't trained as a medic, but he had treated enough injured workers to know the basics. He cleaned her wounds carefully and used the limited supplies he had to stop the bleeding. As he worked, he noticed that her breathing became steadier. Her pulse grew stronger. She was still pale and weak but alive. Night fell over the valley. The wind blew softly through the broken structures, carrying the faint hum of faraway engines. Human patrols were returning to search the battlefield. Eli turned off every light in his truck and covered the windows with metal sheets. The hum of the patrols grew louder, then passed by. He didn't breathe until the sound disappeared completely. Inside the dimly lit cabin, Eli sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, watching the alien sleep. He didn't know what he was doing. If the patrols found her, they'd arrest him for treason. But leaving her out there to die had felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. When she finally opened her eyes again, hours later, Eli noticed how clear they looked now. She blinked slowly, her gaze moving from the ceiling to him. "You are human," she said weakly. He nodded. "That's right. And you're Cerathian. Guess that makes us enemies." She winced as she tried to sit up. "Then why save me?" Eli didn't answer right away. He looked at her wound, checking the bandage. Because, he said finally, I've seen enough dying for one lifetime. You were still breathing. That was reason enough. She looked at him with confusion, almost disbelief. For a moment, she seemed to be searching for the right words. My people would not have done the same, she said softly. Eli smiled faintly. Maybe that's why this war never ends. Everyone's too busy proving their right to care who's bleeding. She didn't reply. The silence between them was not awkward, just heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts. After a while, Eli stood and handed her a flask of water. She took it carefully, her fingers trembling. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, he said. We still have to get you out of here before someone finds us. She tilted her head slightly, her expression puzzled. You would protect me? Eli looked away. Let's just say I'd rather not watch another person die, no matter what species they are. She studied him for a long moment. Then her eyes softened and she whispered her name. Kara, my name is Kara. Eli nodded. Eli Ward, he replied. Try not to move too much, Kara. You lost a lot of blood. That night, Eli stayed awake, listening to every distant sound. Sometimes it was just the wind. Sometimes it was the echo of explosions far away. He kept his blaster close, but never used it. His thoughts were a storm. Memories of fallen friends, orders that made no sense, and now an alien princess sleeping in his care. He looked at her again. Even injured and covered in dust, she had an air of grace about her. It reminded him that she was someone important, someone who probably had a palace waiting for her somewhere across the stars. And yet here she was, left to die on a forgotten world. He whispered quietly to himself, Guess royalty doesn't mean much when the war's over. Kara stirred slightly, her hand moving as if she heard him. He froze but then relaxed when she settled again. He wondered what her people were like beyond the war stories, the ones that painted them as monsters. If they were all like her, maybe the humans had been wrong. Outside, the sky began to turn orange as the first light of dawn touched the clouds. The battlefield stretched endlessly like a graveyard of metal and ash. Eli knew they couldn't stay there much longer. The next patrol would come soon. He started checking his supplies, planning a route through the hills to an abandoned bunker he remembered seeing on old maps. It was risky, but it was their only chance to hide until she was strong enough to move on her own. He looked back at her one more time. She was sleeping peacefully now, her breathing calm. Eli whispered softly, Hang on, princess. I'll get you out of here somehow. He didn't know that this single decision to save one wounded alien would change not just his life but the fate of both their worlds. But in that quiet moment, he wasn't thinking about history or politics. He was thinking about mercy, and how sometimes doing the right thing was the most dangerous choice of all. Outside, the sun rose over the ruins, casting golden light over the wreckage of two armies. And in that light, hidden inside a small human truck, a human and an alien princess shared the same fragile hope: to survive another day. Eli drove slowly through the gray hills, his small transport truck bouncing over broken roads and piles of metal scrap. The sun was hidden behind thick clouds, and every sound felt louder than it should. He kept looking at the scanner on the dashboard, checking for patrol signals. If they were caught, there would be no escape. Kara sat quietly in the back seat, wrapped in a faded blanket. Her wound had started to heal, though she was still weak and pale. She watched the landscape pass by, fields of wreckage, burned-out ships, and broken helmets half buried in the dirt. It was hard for her to believe that this place had once been green and full of life. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy but calm. Eli focused on driving, and Kara seemed lost in her own thoughts. Finally, she asked softly, Where are we going? Eli glanced at her through the mirror. There's an old bunker about 10 miles east of here. It used to be part of a supply route before the fighting started. Nobody goes there anymore. It'll be safe for a while. Safe, she repeated quietly. Does that mean safe from your people or mine? Eli gave a small, tired smile. Hopefully both. Kara didn't reply. She looked down at her hands, studying the bandages around her side. Her eyes were thoughtful, as if she was trying to understand this strange human who had risked everything for her. When they reached the bunker, it was just as Eli remembered, half buried under a hill covered with vines and dust. The metal door creaked loudly as he pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled old and dry. There were a few working lights, some broken furniture, and shelves full of old human supplies. Eli parked the truck inside, then helped Kara down carefully. She leaned on his shoulder as they walked to a small cot in the corner. "You should rest," he said. "I'll see what I can find to eat." She nodded, sitting down slowly. "I do not eat the same things humans do," she said weakly. "Yeah, I figured," Eli replied. "But we'll make it work." He searched through the storage crates and found some old ration packs and a few containers of filtered water. While heating his food on a portable burner, he glanced at her again. She was staring at the flame with quiet curiosity, as if fascinated by something so simple. "Do humans always cook their food like this?" she asked. "Not always," Eli said with a small chuckle. "But it helps. Makes things taste less like cardboard." She tilted her head slightly. "And you do this even in war?" Eli shrugged. "We try to hold on to normal things. It's how we stay sane." Kara was silent for a moment, then said softly, "We don't have fire on SCIFI-Prime. Our energy comes from the crystals that grow beneath our cities. They glow for thousands of years. We use them for warmth, for light, for everything." Eli smiled faintly. "Sounds beautiful." "It was," she said sadly. "Until the war." He looked at her carefully. "Why did it start?" "Nobody ever told us the truth." Kara hesitated. Her eyes lowered and her voice became quiet. "Because of fear. Because both sides believed the other wanted to conquer. My father believed humans were dangerous. Your leaders believed the same about us. And once the first shot was fired, there was no turning back." Eli poked at the flame with a metal stick. "Funny how it's always fear that ruins everything." She nodded slowly. "Fear." And pride. For the first time since he'd met her, Eli saw something different in her eyes. Not just pain, but guilt. She had been a princess, born into command. And yet she looked like someone carrying a heavy burden. After a while, they shared a quiet meal. Eli with his ration pack, Kara with some dried fruits she carried in a small pouch attached to her armor. They didn't say much, but the silence felt easier now, almost peaceful. When night came, Kara couldn't sleep. The wind outside howled softly and the sound of distant thunder rolled through the sky. Eli was working on the truck, fixing a broken power cell when she spoke again. "You could have left me there," she said from behind him. "Your orders said not to help aliens, didn't they?" Eli turned to wrench slowly, thinking about how to answer. "Yeah, they did. Then why?" she asked quietly. "Why risk everything for someone who was your enemy?" Eli sighed and put down his tools. He wiped his hands on his shirt and looked at her. "Because when I found you, you weren't an enemy. You were just a person who needed help. I couldn't look at you and do nothing." Kara watched him carefully. "You are different from what I was told." He smiled a little. "I think you are too." Their eyes met for a moment and neither of them looked away. It wasn't friendship yet, but something fragile had started to form between them. Something that felt almost like trust. The next morning, Eli woke up early and checked his radio. He picked up a few signals, human patrols scanning nearby sectors. One voice was clear. "Command reports deserter activity in Zone 9. All units, sweep for unauthorized transports." Eli's stomach dropped. Zone 9 was where they were hiding. He quickly packed their supplies and woke Kara. "We have to go. They're searching this area." She blinked sleepily, still weak but understood the urgency in his tone. "I can walk," she said, standing carefully. They got back into the truck and left the bunker, driving toward the mountains. The road was rough, and Kara held on tightly to the seat as they bounced through rocks and fallen trees. Behind them, the sound of distant engines grew louder. A small human drone appeared in the sky, scanning the terrain. Eli cursed under his breath. He pulled the truck behind a rocky ridge and shut off the engine. The drone hovered closer. Its searchlight swept across the ground, slowly moving toward them. Eli knew if it detected Kara's life signs, everything would be over. Kara looked at him and whispered, "Give me the device." "What device?" "The one that creates your energy field. I can mask it." Eli blinked, realizing she meant his power regulator. He handed it to her quickly. She pressed a glowing piece of her own tech against it. The lights on the drone flickered. A few seconds later, the machine started spinning uncontrollably before crashing into the ground nearby. Eli stared at her, amazed. "You just fried it." Kara gave a faint, tired smile. Sarathian technology is not so easy to fool. Before Eli could respond, the explosion from the drone drew attention from far away. 2 human scout bikes were moving toward the smoke. "Time to move," he said urgently. They sped through the valley, the truck rattling violently. The scout bikes were fast, but Eli knew the terrain better. He took a narrow path between two cliffs, barely wide enough for the vehicle. Rocks scraped the sides as they passed. The scouts tried to follow but got stuck. After an hour of driving, they finally stopped at a quiet cave near the mountains. Eli parked inside and turned off the engine. Both of them sat in silence, catching their breath. Kara leaned back, closing her eyes. "You saved me again," she said softly. Eli shook his head. "No, you saved us both this time. That drone trick was something else." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps we make a good team," he chuckled. "Maybe we do." For a while they rested in silence. The cave was dark and cool, and for the first time Eli felt a strange sense of calm. He looked at Kara, who was staring at the faint light coming through the rocks. There was something noble about her, something strong and proud even in weakness. He wondered what her people would think if they knew she was alive. Would they come for her? Or had they already written her off as lost? Kara seemed to sense his thoughts. "They left me because I was wounded," she said quietly. "They believed a princess who could not fight was not worth saving." Eli frowned. "That's cruel. It is our way," she said softly. "We value strength. Weakness is shame." Eli shook his head. "Where I come from, helping someone isn't weakness. It's the only thing that makes us human." Kara looked at him for a long time, her eyes reflecting the dim light. "Then perhaps," she said slowly, "humanity is stronger than we thought." Outside, the wind grew stronger and thunder rolled again in the distance. Somewhere far behind them, human patrols were still searching. But inside the cave, for a brief moment, there was peace. Two beings from different worlds sat together. No longer enemies, just survivors bound by compassion. And as Eli watched the storm clouds move across the alien sky, he knew that whatever happened next, he could never go back to who he was before, because saving her had changed him in a way he couldn't explain. And though she didn't say it out loud, Kara felt the same. The human who refused to let her die had become something she had never expected, her only hope and perhaps her first friend among the stars. The morning after the storm was quiet. The sky was a pale blue, soft and calm after so many nights of thunder. The air smelled clean for the first time in days. Inside the mountain cave, Eli sat near the entrance, staring at the horizon while Kara still slept. He looked tired, but his eyes stayed sharp, watching for movement across the open fields below. They had been hiding for 2 days now. Food was running low, and the truck's power cell was almost drained. If they stayed longer, they would be found. If they left, they might still be caught on the open road. Either way, the danger was closing in. Eli turned his head as Kara stirred awake. She blinked slowly, then sat up, her silvery hair catching the weak morning light. She looked better now. Her wounds had almost healed, and her strength was returning. "How long until your people notice you're gone?" Eli asked quietly. Kara looked down, thoughtful. "They already know," she said softly. "But I don't know if they care." "You said you were a princess," Eli reminded her. "They wouldn't just forget about that." Kara smiled sadly. "Being a princess in a time of war means less than you think. My title only mattered when I was useful. When I was wounded, I became a burden. My guards left me because saving me would have slowed their retreat." Eli frowned, his jaw tightening. "That's not right. You're worth more than that." She looked at him, her violet eyes calm but distant. "On my world, worth is measured by strength. On yours, it seems to be measured by mercy. Maybe that's why you're the one who found me." He didn't know what to say. Her words carried a strange truth that made him quiet. He picked up his toolkit and pretended to work on the truck just to avoid her gaze. After a while, Kara spoke again. "You could still leave me here," she said. "If your people find you with me, they will punish you. I do not want that." Eli looked at her sharply. "You think I saved you just to abandon you now?" She hesitated, unsure of his tone. "No," she said softly, "but I do not understand why you care so much." Eli sighed, leaning against the metal wall of the cave. "Because it's what I'd hope someone would do for me if I was in your place. That's it. No bigger reason." Kara watched him silently. She wanted to believe that people like him existed everywhere, but deep down she knew. He was different. The kind of person who chose what was right even when it was hard. Hours passed quietly until Eli's radio began to crackle with static. A voice came through, sharp and commanding. "This is Commander Hurst to all units. The deserter, Eli Ward, has been located in Sector 7. He is believed to be hiding with a Sarathian survivor. Orders are to capture both. Do not allow escape, Eli froze. The signal was close. Kara's eyes widened as she realized what that meant. They're coming, she whispered. He nodded grimly. Yeah, too fast for us to outrun them now. What will you do? He stood up and walked to the truck. What I have to? I'm calling for help, your kind of help. Kara blinked. What do you mean? Eli pulled out a small transmitter from his bag. I've been scanning your people's communication frequencies since the night I found you. I think I can send a short message to one of their satellites. If it works, they'll know you're alive. She looked at him in shock. But the signal will expose our location to both sides. He nodded. Yeah, that's the risk. Kara grabbed his arm, her voice tense. You'll be captured. Eli smiled faintly. Probably. But at least you'll be safe. For a moment, Kara didn't speak. Her chest felt tight. She wanted to tell him not to do it, to find another way, but there was no time. The scanner showed movement approaching from the west, human gunships. The echo of engines filled the air, shaking the ground. Eli turned on the transmitter and started typing quickly. This is Eli Ward, human engineer. I have with me Princess Kara of SciFi-Prime. She is alive and injured. Coordinates attached. Request immediate rescue, he hit send. The device beeped softly, sending the signal up through the stormy clouds. Kara looked at him with both anger and sadness. You are a fool, she said quietly. A brave fool. Yeah, he said with a small smile, but I'm your fool now. Before they could say more, the roar of gunships filled the valley. Eli grabbed his blaster and moved toward the cave entrance. Kara stood behind him, weak but ready. A human voice echoed from outside. Eli Ward, step out with your hands up. You are under arrest for aiding the enemy. Eli took a deep breath and turned to Kara. Stay behind me. Don't move until you see them fire. Kara's eyes narrowed. You cannot fight them alone. I don't need to, he said softly. I just need to buy you time. Outside, soldiers in gray armor surrounded the cave, weapons drawn. Eli stepped out slowly, his hands raised. Don't do this, Ward, the commander called. Turn the alien over and we'll forget this ever happened. Eli shook his head. She's not your enemy anymore. She's a threat, the man shouted. She doesn't belong here. Eli's voice was calm but firm. Neither do we, not if this is what we've become. For a moment there was silence. The commander's face hardened. You chose the wrong side. Eli didn't answer. He looked up at the sky instead. A faint glimmer appeared above the clouds, shimmering blue light breaking through the gray. Kara stepped forward, her eyes wide. That's my ship. The Sarathian rescue craft broke through the clouds like a comet, its engines roaring, light washing over the battlefield. Human soldiers stumbled back, shielding their eyes. The ship's energy shields flared, sending waves of static across the scanners. Kara ran forward, calling out in her native language. The ship responded with a low hum, lowering a beam of light that reached toward the ground. Eli looked at her, smiling faintly. Looks like they got the message. She turned to him, panic flashing in her eyes. Come with me. He shook his head. They won't let me go. I'll only slow you down. Kara grabbed his hand. I will not leave you here. Eli's voice was quiet but steady. You have to. You can end this war, Kara. They'll listen to you if you go back. That's how you repay me, by making sure no one else dies like this again. Kara's eyes filled with tears she didn't understand. She had never cried before. Eli, she whispered, her voice trembling. The human soldiers began shouting again, aiming their weapons. The Sarathian ship's engines grew louder, shaking the ground. Eli gently pushed her toward the light. Go. For a moment she resisted. Then with a deep breath she stepped into the beam of light. The ship began to lift her up, her gaze locked on Eli the entire time. Thank you, she whispered. Eli stood below, watching her rise into the sky, his heart both heavy and calm. The light faded, and the ship vanished into the clouds. Moments later, the human soldiers surrounded him. They took his weapon, restrained him, and led him away. But he didn't fight. He kept his head high, knowing he had done the right thing. Weeks passed. Eli sat in a military cell waiting for judgment. Some called him a traitor. Others called him a fool. But one morning the guards opened his cell door and handed him a small data chip. From the Sarathians, the officer said. They sent this directly to command. Eli plugged the chip into the console. A hologram appeared, Kara's image glowing softly above the table. She looked regal again, dressed in the royal armor of her people. Eli Ward, her voice said calm and proud. Because of your courage, our people have chosen peace. The war has ended. Your leaders have agreed to your release. You are free. Her hologram paused, then smiled gently. You once told me that mercy makes humans strong. You were right. It made me stronger too. The message ended and the hologram faded. Eli sat quietly, unable to speak. Outside his cell, a door opened and the guard simply said, "You can go." He walked out into the bright sunlight. The sky above was clear, the air warm and peaceful. For the first time in years, there were no ships in the sky, no explosions, no war. Just silence. Eli looked up at the horizon and smiled faintly. Somewhere among the stars, Kara was alive, leading her people toward a new beginning. And though they were from different worlds, they shared one truth. Kindness could change the course of history. That day, one man's choice to save a dying stranger became the first step toward peace between two worlds. And far above, on a ship orbiting the quiet planet, a Cerathian princess looked out at the stars and whispered softly, "Thank you, Eli. The universe will remember what you did."